Hello everybody. Today I'm going to show you the parts of the male and the female reproductive systems. So first we'll see the anatomy of a male reproductive system. So this is a male reproductive system model. So you can see some organs or parts of the male reproductive system in this model. So first we'll see the primary male reproductive organs. Primary male reproductive organs are testes. This is one of two testes located inside this sac. This is called the scrotum. So two testes are housed or located inside this scrotum, and testes produce the sperm, the male gametes or male sex cells are sperm. Okay. So the primary reproductive organs are also called gonads. So male gonads or primary reproductive organs are two testes and they produce the sperm. Testes also produce testosterone, the male sex hormone. Okay. Then this structure which is attached to the testis, this is called the epididymis. It is a comma shaped or C-shaped structure. The upper end is called the head of the epididymis, and then body and tail of the epididymis. After the sperm is produced inside the testis, the sperm goes to the epididymis and stays inside the head of the epididymis and get matured there, and then it goes through the body and tail, and then from the tail a tube like structure that goes all the way to the pelvic cavity, and that tube is called the ductus deferens or vas deferens. So from the tail part of epididymis, the sperm enters into the ductus deferens or vas deferens. That ductus deferens passes through this structure. This whole structure is called the spermatic cord. So you have ductus deferens inside this spermatic cord, as well as you have the testicular artery, vein, lymphatic vessels and nerve plexuses, as well as a muscle that is called the cremaster muscle. All those structures are bundled inside the spermatic cord. So in this spermatic cord you have the ductus deferens or vas deferens, the tube that takes the sperm out. You have the testicular artery, testicular vein, you have the lymphatic vessels, you have the nerve plexus, and a muscle that is called the cremaster muscle that hangs the testis from above. Okay. Then you see the ductus deferens or vas deferens goes this way and enters into the ejaculatory duct, and from there goes to the urethra and gets out from the body. So this is the ductus deferens or vas deferens. Okay. Then the wall of the scrotum has three structures in it. The outer layer is the skin, and then you have the superficial fascia, which is a connective tissue, soft connective tissue layer, and a thin layer of Ductus muscle. So skin is the outer covering, then you have the superficial fascia, connective tissue, and then you have a thin layer of Ductus muscle. Okay. So cremaster muscle comes from above through the spermatic cord and hangs the testis from above, and Ductus muscle is present in the wall of the scrotum. Okay. Then the penis. This is a part of male external genitalia, penis and scrotum. These are two male external genitalia. The end part of the penis is the glans penis. Okay? And this portion is called the shaft, and the part attached to the body wall, that is the root or crus penis. So glans, shaft and root or crus penis. Then if you see the glands in male reproductive system, this gland, which is located under the urinary bladder. So this big organ is the urinary bladder, and under the urinary bladder, this gland of male reproductive system is called the prostate. There is only one prostate located inferior to the urinary bladder, and prostatic secretion is important to mature the sperm. So the secretion is slightly acidic, and that helps the sperm to get more mature. This is a seminal vesicle. In male reproductive system, you have two seminal vesicles, another one is in the other side, and two seminal vesicles produce most of the semen. About 70% volume of semen comes from the seminal vesicles. Okay, so production of semen, the fluid, which is slightly alkaline. And this structure is the end part of the ureter. You know, ureter is a part of the urinary system that transport the urine from the kidney to the bladder. So this is the end of the ureter that brings the urine into the urinary bladder. So these two are not the parts of reproductive system, they are the parts of the urinary system. Okay, and then this structure is the transverse colon. So you can see here that the part of the colon that goes this way, this is the transverse colon. It is a part of the digestive system. This is called the rectum. Okay, so it is also a part of your digestive system. So transverse colon, rectum. Okay, and now if we see inside the penis, you see this is the urethra. This part of the urethra, male urethra, is called the spongy urethra. Okay, this is the last and longest part of the male urethra, and around the spongy urethra, this tissue structure, it is a spongy structure that surrounds the spongy urethra, that is called corpus spongiosum. So corpus spongiosum is this spongy tissue structure around the spongy urethra. Okay, and corpus spongiosum, you see, goes inside the glans penis and fill the glans penis. So this is corpus spongiosum. Okay, and you have two other spongy structures inside the penis. Those are called corpora cavernosa. So cavernosa are two, and spongiosum is only one. And these three structures, spongy structures, have a lot of spaces or sinuses inside, and when the blood fills those spaces inside the corpora cavernosa and also inside the corpus spongiosum, the enlargement, hardening and erection of penis occurs. Okay, so from the artery, the blood gets out and fill the sinuses or spaces inside the corpora cavernosa as well as inside the corpus spongiosum, because they have a lot of sinuses or spaces inside. And when the blood goes back, then the penis gets relaxed and go back to normal size and condition. Now, two corpora cavernosa are the main structures. They are responsible for the enlargement and hardening of and erection of the penis, because they have more sinuses than the corpus spongiosum. Okay. Now, here this is inside the prostate, right? So this is the prostate, this is the urinary bladder. So let's see the urinary bladder. Although it is a part of the urinary system, in the wall of the urinary bladder you have the muscle that is called detrusor muscle, okay, that can expand and squeeze. So detrusor muscle is here, and the inner thick mucosa forms many folds. Those are called the rugae, and this is the first part of the urethra that takes the urine out from the bladder. And you see this part is inside the prostate. So this part of the urethra is the first part, which is called the prostatic urethra. Makes sense? Inside the prostate. And then this flat muscle you see here is called urogenital diaphragm. This urogenital diaphragm actually supports the pelvic organs from the bottom, and the part of the urethra that passes through this urogenital diaphragm here, that is the second part of the urethra and shortest part of the urethra, that is called the membranous urethra. So prostatic urethra is the first part, and then inside the diaphragm you have the second and shortest part, that is the membranous urethra, and this is the third part, the longest part, that is the spongy urethra inside the penis. Okay. Now you see what happens. The end of the ductus deferens, this is the end part of the ductus deferens or vas deferens, that gets slightly wider or expanded. This expanded end is called the ampulla of the ductus deferens. Ampulla indicates the expanded part of a tube. Okay, so that is the ampulla of the ductus deferens, and the sperm and semen enters into the ejaculatory duct. This part, this tube is called the ejaculatory duct. So from the ampulla of ductus deferens, the sperm and semen enter into the ejaculatory duct, this part, and then into the prostatic urethra, then membranous urethra, then spongy urethra, then gets out from the body. Okay. Now let's see a couple other structures that you can see here. This is the bone called sacrum, you know that, coccyx, okay, and then you can see the cartilage that attaches two hip bones anteriorly. This is called the pubic symphysis. You must remember from ANP1, fibrocartilage, pubic symphysis, connects two hip bones. So those are the structures you can see here in the male reproductive system. Okay, so let's quickly go over. Okay, so this is the testis, primary reproductive organ or male gonad, and inside the testis the sperm or gamete or sex cell are produced, and also the sex hormone testosterone is produced inside the testis. Okay, and this structure is the epididymis. This is the head of the epididymis, body and tail. From the tail, the tube or duct that takes the sperm out that is called the ductus deferens or vas deferens. It goes through the spermatic cord. This whole structure is the spermatic cord. It has ductus deferens or vas deferens, as well as you have testicular artery, vein, lymphatic vessels, nerve plexus, as well as a muscle. You see the muscle fibers. That muscle is called the cremaster muscle that hangs the testis from above. Okay. This is the ductus deferens, the tube goes like this, and this is the end part of the ductus deferens. This is the seminal vesicle, produces most of the semen, which is slightly alkaline, and this is the prostate, located under the urinary bladder, and produces prostatic secretion that is slightly acidic and helps the maturation of the sperm. Okay. This is the glans penis shaft, and the root part or crus of penis is attached to the wall, body wall. Okay. And now if you see inside the penis, this is the spongy urethra, and there are three sponge like structures. One is around the spongy urethra, that is called the corpus spongiosum. Okay. It goes inside the glans penis, and two other structures, those are called corpora cavernosa. All three get filled with blood, and that enlarges the penis and make it harder and helps in the erection of the penis. Mainly two corpora cavernosa are responsible for the enlargement and hardening and erection of the penis. Okay. Now this glans penis is covered by a skin that is called prepuce. So prepuce is the skin that covers the gland penis, and surgical removal of that skin, which is also called foreskin, is called circumcision. Okay. This is the transverse colon. This is the rectum. Okay, the bone sacrum. Then now let's see here inside. This is the wall of the urinary bladder. So this muscle is called the detressor muscle. Rugae. You have a trigon here around the urethra. The surface is smooth, not rough. And this is the prostatic urethra. This is the urogenital diaphragm, and the part of the urethra that passes through this thin muscle, that is the membranous urethra, shortest part, and this is the longest part of the urethra, that is the spongy urethra. Okay. So those are the structures you can see in this model. Then we'll see the female. Now we'll see the female reproductive system, the parts of the female reproductive system. So female reproductive system has also the primary reproductive organs or gonads. Those are called the ovaries. So two ovaries inside the pelvic cavity. Okay, this is one half, so you can see one side of the body. So this is an ovary, this one, and this structure is called the fallopian tube or uterine tube. So what happens, the ovaries release the egg. So egg is produced, egg or ovum or oocyte is produced inside the ovary, and that egg is released, and that egg enters into the fallopian tube or uterine tube. Okay. Now if you see the free end of the fallopian tube, you have finger-like structures like these. These are called fimbriae, and the fimbriae are attached to this part of the uterine tube, and this is called the infundibulum. So it's like your hand. These are fimbriae, and the palm is the infundibulum. So this part is the infundibulum, and then this part that turns towards the uterus, this is the uterus, that part is called the ampulla. It is slightly wider than other parts. So this is the ampulla, and inside the ampulla, most of the cases fertilization of the egg or ovum takes place inside the ampulla. So sperm travels long way and meet the ovum or egg here, okay, and then fertilized egg moves towards the house, which is the uterus, where the embryo becomes the fetus, okay. So this is the uterus, and the part of the uterine tube that is attached to the uterus, that part is slightly constricted, narrow. That part is called the isthmus of the uterine tube or fallopian tube. So let's go and see the fallopian tube again. These free finger-like structures are called the fimbriae. They capture the released egg, which is released from the ovary, and then that egg enters into the uterine tube. The fimbriae are attached to this part. This is called the infundibulum, and this slightly wider part that turns towards the uterus, that is the ampulla, where fertilization usually takes place, and the part attached to the uterus, that is the isthmus, which is slightly constricted, okay. And now we'll see two ligaments. You can see in this side, this ligament is called the round ligament that connects the uterus to the labius majus here. So goes all the way to the posterior wall of the labius majus, and it supports the uterus to hold the uterus in right location in the pelvic cavity, okay. Because you know, when the fetus gets bigger inside the uterus, it gets a lot of, you know, heavy weight. So that's why uterus is supported by a number of ligaments. So this is round ligament. There is another one on the other side. This ligament is called the ovarian ligament. It connects the uterus to the ovary. Ovarian ligament, this one, okay. Round ligament, this one. And now we'll see the parts of the uterus. If you see the uterus, okay. So you see, this is the uterus, okay, that houses the fetus, and this top part, which is like dome shaped, round, this part is called the fundus of the uterus, and this part is the body of the uterus. So fundus, body, and then slightly constricted part, that is called the isthmus. Remember, the constricted part is called the isthmus. You must remember the isthmus of the uterine tube is here, that constricted part attached to the uterus. Similarly, the constricted part of the uterus is called the isthmus of the uterus, okay. And then the last part is the cervix of the uterus. So fundus, body, isthmus, and cervix, okay. This is the urinary bladder, which is located below the uterus, okay, in the female body. Now we'll see the external genital organs. So this is the labius majus or labia majora, the hairy part, and then this is the labius minus, okay, and this is the clitoris. You can see inside, you can see more clear here. So this is labius majus or labia majora. This is the labius minus or labia minora. This is a sensitive structure, has a lot of blood vessels and nerves. This is called the clitoris, okay. Then this is the urinary bladder located under the uterus, and you see the female urethra, which is much shorter than the male urethra, okay. And inside the female urinary bladder you also have rugae and trigon. Now you see here, this is the dissected uterus. So in the wall of the uterus there are 3 layers. The outer covering is called the perimetrium. Peri means around, so perimetrium. Then middle thick layer is the myometrium, muscle, myometrium. Myo indicates muscle. And then innermost layer, that is the endometrium. Okay, the shading of the endometrium is menstruation. Okay, now inside the uterus you see the cavity. This is called the uterine cavity, and when the fetus grows this cavity gets bigger, right? And also the whole uterus gets much bigger. And this part is the fundus. This is the body of the uterus. You see this constricted part is called the isthmus, this narrow part, and the lower end of the uterus is the cervix. So this is the cervix, and inside the cervix this is the cervical canal. Okay, and this is the vagina, and vaginal wall has 3 layers too. The outermost tough connective tissue membrane, that is called adventitia. Then middle muscular layer is the middle layer. Okay, and then innermost mucosa is thick and it forms many folds. Those are called rugae. So innermost layer is the thick mucosal folding, and those foldings are called rugae. So you have seen rugae in 3 organs, right? Inside the stomach the foldings are called rugae. Inside the urinary bladder you have rugae. Inside the vagina you have rugae. Okay. And now you see the lower end of the uterus, which is called the cervix, right? And this is the uppermost part of the vagina. This is the canal inside the vagina, and this is the uppermost part. So there is a space between the cervix of the uterus and the vaginal wall, and this space is called the fornix. So it is actually like this. So this is the cervix of the uterus, and this is the uppermost part of the vagina. So around the cervix you have this space, that is the fornix. Okay, so let's see again. This is the fornix, and this part is the rectum, external anal sphincter. This is the pubic symphysis that connects to hip bones, the cartilage. This is the ureter that transports urine or brings the urine from the kidney to the bladder. Okay, and those are the structures you can see here in the female reproductive model. Let's quickly go over. So okay, so let's start from the primary female reproductive organs, or ovaries. So you can see one ovary here, and this is the uterine tube or fallopian tube. The ovary releases the egg or ovum, okay, that is captured by the fimbriae, the finger-like structures at the end of the fallopian tube or uterine tube, and the fimbriae are attached to this part. This is the infundibulum. This part is the ampulla. Inside the ampulla fertilization takes place in most of the time, and then the part that is attached to the uterus, that part is slightly constricted, and that is called the isthmus of the uterine tube or fallopian tube. Okay, so those are the parts of the uterine tube or fallopian tube. Now this is the round ligament that connects the uterus to the posterior wall of the labius majus. This is the ovarian ligament that connects the uterus to the ovary. Okay, and then let's see the uterus. This dome-shaped part is called the fundus, and this is the body of the uterus. This is the isthmus, the constricted part, and this part is the cervix. Okay, and this is the vagina. And below the uterus, you have the urinary bladder. Okay, this is the labius majus or labia majora, and then this is the labius minus or labia minora. Let's see inside. So labius majus, labius minus, clitoris. This is the vagina. 3 layers: adventitia, then muscular layer, middle, and innermost mucosa, which forms many folds, and those are called rugae. Okay, and this is the wall of the uterus. It has outer perimetrium, middle thick myometrium, innermost endometrium. Okay, and this cavity inside the uterus is called the uterine cavity, and this canal inside the cervix of the uterus is called the cervical canal. Okay, cervical canal has 2 openings or mouths. This is called the external os, external, outer, and this part is called the internal os, and in between internal os here and external os, this part is the cervical canal. Okay, this canal opens a lot just before the birth of the fetus. Then let's see, this is the ureter, brings urine into the bladder. Okay, this is the female urethra, which is much shorter than the male urethra. Okay, and this is the rectum, anal canal, anal sphincter. Okay, pubic symphysis. So those are the structures you can see in this model.